Hello everyone, welcome to our briefing on one bug to rule them all, sustainably exploiting a Preauth RCE vulnerabilities on Windows Server 2025. And first of all, please allow us to introduce ourselves. Shi Liangpeng, also known as Edward Peng in Twitter. She is an associate professor for Huazhong University of Science and Technology and a part-time security researcher at Cyber Kunlun. More information about him could be found in his personal site. And my co-worker is Zishan Lin. He is a security researcher. His research focuses on Windows security. And I'm Ver. I'm a security research focused on Windows IoT blockchain security about 3 years. Here is the agenda of our talk. First, we will give an introduction. Then we will talk about the remote desktop license RPC service internals. After that, we will review the heap overflow bug, CVE 2024-38077 in RDL. Next, we will present the exploitation and how to play with the LFH. In the end, we will give a summary. Okay, first is the introduction. Look back through history of Windows Preauth RCE memory cooperation exploitation. We can find there are a lot of outstanding exploitations like Winshock, internal blue keep, SMB ghost, and so on. As research continues, we filter out the Preauth low user interaction network-based memory cooperation vulnerabilities in 2024, and found that although there are a lot of Preauth memory cooperation vulnerabilities in Windows every year, only a few of them are ever exploited in practice. There are many possible reasons which lead to the low exploit rate. The mitigation of modern Windows should be the main one. Nonetheless, despite these layered defenses, it remains possible to achieve exploitation with just a single vulnerability. This is demonstrated by our meta license exploit. Windows Remote Desktop License Server Preauth RCE using just one bug. In effect, rule them all. Let's begin by discussing remote desktop service. This core Windows feature is primarily used for personal remote access, server management, and even remote desktop rental servers. Over the years, numerous vulnerabilities have been identified within remote desktop servers, but there are no remote exploit for many years. This is the framework of the entire remote desktop service on Windows Server. There are 6 components. In our latest research, we focused on the remote desktop listening server, also called RDL. Despite its importance in remote desktop ecosystem, it has received comparatively little attention from the research community. When a client connects to an RD session host server, the RD session host server will check whether RDS client's access license, also called CAL, is needed, and the RDL service will issue CAL to the client. Then the client can use this CAL to connect to the RD session host server. Before we audit the RDL server, network scans showed 117,000 RDL servers exploited online and far more internally. As RDL service is often deployed within critical business systems and remote desktop clusters, the Preauth RCE vulnerabilities in the RDL service pose a significant threat to the cyber world. And next, we will introduce the internals of RD Remote Desktop License Server RPC. In Windows, the RDL service provides the RPC interface to help administrator in managing RD license. Administrator can use the RD listening manager to manage the RD listening server, as shown in the following figure. Using the RPC view tool, we can get the RPC information of RDL service. It appears that this interface lacks callbacks and does not have flags set for authentication. So everyone can call the 119 RPC interface in lserver.del with no authentication. Below, we will introduce a few RPC interfaces that are important for the code flow. The first one, we will introduce the RPC interface, TLS RPC Connect. We firstly need to call TLS RPC Connect to establish a connection. And the server will unlock a contact trunk and impersonate the client to check whether it has admin privileges on the server. If it has, the client flags members instruct context is set to 2. Otherwise, it's set to 1. And finally, return the context handle for our subsequent RPC interactions. So reverse analyze, we found that when client flag is set to 0xFFFFFFFF, all functions can be called. Therefore, if we can do this, it would greatly aid our vulnerabilities research efforts. And then next, we will introduce our RPC interface, our TLS RPC challenge server and TLS RPC response server challenge. The client calls TLS RPC challenge server to obtain the challenge. Afterward, the client calls TLS RPC response server challenge and sends the calculated response to the server. The server will verify the response and complete the authentication, also setting client flags to 0xFFFFFFF. However, the server's verification process simply checks if the client's response matches the MD5 hash of server challenge at a hard-coded GUID, which allows anyone to easily set client flags. Through the above method, our RPC request can access all RPC methods in RDL. Congratulations. And next, we will introduce CVE 2024-38077. When using the Activate Server Wizard in RD Listening Manager, if the user chooses the telephone activation method and follows Microsoft's instructions to call and provide a product ID, they will receive a license server ID, also called license key pack or LKP. After entering the LKP and submit it, the TLS RPC telephone register LKP function is called. And the CVE 2024-38077 is a heap overflow vulnerabilities that occurs in the C data coding decode data function. Inside the TLS RPC telephone register LKP function, it will decode the LKP. The LKP decoding process is similar to base 24 decoding. It using a fixed size heap block of 32 bytes to store the decoded results. However, there are no restrictions on the input data. This means that if the input data is large enough, a controllable heap overflow will occur. So the next part, we will introduce the exploitation overview. Welcome my co-worker Zisanling to present it.
Okay, to exploit the bug, we need to follow a series of steps that involve both leaking addresses and bypassing various security mechanisms such as ASLR and CFG. Typically, the two steps would require two separate vulnerabilities to be exploited, right? However, after further research, we just found that this CVE can achieve both objectives or primitives at the same time. Below, we will explain the details. Regarding to the heap allocation mechanism, the size of the overwriting structure needs to be 32 bytes. After in-depth analysis, we just found the structure context was generated when calling the TLS RPC connect interface. Each call to TLS RPC connect would request a new context and save it in the memory. And it have two pointers type members, client name and context handle. Those two key pointers will help us complete the operations of the address leakage and hijacking the control flow, respectively. First, we will introduce RPC functions using the leaking the address processing. TLS RPC request terms of cert and TLS RPC retrieve terms of cert. When TLS RPC request terms of cert is called, the server will retain the character request information in the context. Then when TLS RPC retrieve terms of cert is called, the server will use the request and client connection data stored in the context to generate the corresponding certifications and return it to the client. The returned data contains the content to the content name field. We just use Wireshark to capture package and found the the return package contains the IP value of the client pointed to by context to client name. The return IP address is stored in the client name of the context structures. It's an address on the heap. So if we use heap overflow to partially overwrite its lower bytes, we can get information leak on the system heap management structures. As shown in the figure, we can leak the value of the heap base address plus 0x188. Okay, so now we can get our needed addresses. The next step is control the program's execution flow. Through reverse engineering, we just found the function TLS RPC keep packing non-nest function. In this function, it checks if the context type member of the context is equal to 1. So if the requirement is satisfied, a virtual function call is made inside the function. The address of the virtual function call is stored in the context handle. Therefore, we can construct a fake context handle and trigger the heap overflow vulnerabilities to change the context handle to the fake one. Then calling TLS RPC keep packing non-nest function to hijack the program's control flow. In how to construct the fake object, we could find functions that can pass our input and save it to the heap. Heap spring technologies now can improve the accuracy of the predicated addresses. Although in the previous step, we were able to successfully hijack the program's control flow due to Windows on CFG protections, the address of the forged virtual table core cannot be outside of the CFG whitelist. To bypass CFG, we can hijack the control flow to the function NDR serve call 2 in RPC runtime. This function is in the whitelist of the CFG and has only one parameter, prpc message, whose structure is just as follows. As a figure. So if we forge the RPC message structure and forge the dispart table and buffer into the function and the parameters we want to set, we can call any functions with any parameters. For example, if we just let the remote server call the load library function to load a malicious DLL. Okay, so the exploitation seems really simple, but will LFRH on the Windows make it easy for us to exploit it? Let's dive a little bit more in the LFH. The LFH is a policy inside the Windows heap management, controlling the allocation of the heap blocks whose size is lower than approximately 6 KB. So in our cases, because the size of the connection context is 32 bytes, when the RDL server allocates memory for it, the allocation is managed by the LFH. LFH blocks are allocated from LFH subsegment, and every block within subsegment is the same size. Each subsegment includes an LFH block bitmap that tracks the allocation status of the other blocks. This bitmap is composed of 64-bit entries, and each entry just representing the free and allocation status of 32 one after another blocks. When a user requests a memory blocks, the LFH randomly selects the free block from the most recently used bitmap entry. If that bitmap entry contains no free blocks, the LFH moves on to subsequent bitmap entries until it finds one with a valuable block. For example, if a user requests 5 blocks of the same size one after another, the LFH will return 5 blocks in the random sequence, as shown in the graph below. There is a delay-free mechanism of LFH. When the user frees an LFH block, it's not immediately marked as freed in the bitmap. Instead, the block just remains in the allocated status, and it is linked to a delay-free list maintained in the subsegment header. Those blocks are only truly freed when the delay-free timer expires. So in the last page, we mentioned that delay-free blocks are linked into the list, maintained in the subsegment header. This is implemented by reserving the first 16 bytes of each delay-free blocks as a header. This header includes a point to the next delay-free blocks along with an encoded key. The encoded key is computed based on the LFH context key, the block's address, and the free list value. When the delay-free timer expired and the block is finally free, the key is checked to ensure that delay-free header has not been checked. Here is a concise summary of our heap spree process. We begin by allocating enough connection context blocks so that the earlier context blocks fill up a bitmap entry that also contain blocks with other data. The later context blocks exclusively fill another bitmap entry. Next, we free a small number of connection context blocks. This creates holes in some bitmap entries. Since we ensure that enough bitmap entries are filled only with connection context blocks, there is a high likelihood that freed holes are located immediately just before blocks containing the connection context. We then wait for the delay-free mechanism to fully process the freed blocks. This is crucial to avoid accidentally overwriting the header of any delay-free blocks. Okay, so finally, we allocate a new block. The one we intend to overflow with our control setup, there is a high chance that this overflowable blocks is placed just right before the blocks containing the connection context. Let's walk through the entire exploitation process. For information leak, we perform a heap spree that targets the connection context structure. By carefully overwriting the blocks, we overwrite the member of the structure, and which allow us to leak the heap addresses. We then repeat similar techniques to leak other crucial addresses, such as the base address of the NTDLL, the PEB, and any other additional information we need. With all those addresses in hand, we move on to the next phase, crafting a fake object on the heap. We construct this object with a specifically prepared virtual function table that is deliberately set to point to a function in RPC RT4-DAL. This redirection is crucial as it helps us to bypass CFG. Finally, we invoke a method on this fake object. Because this variable points us to our just say to our chosen target in RPC RT4-DAL, calling the method effectively transfer control of the execution flow to our own code. In other words, this chain of the actions from leaking addresses to crafting a fake object and then calling its method just allow us to redirect program execution to our own advantage. Okay. Here is a demonstration of our exploitation action. The success rate of the exploitation is almost 100%. In this live demo, we successfully controlled the execution flow to load a DL from a control path. Okay. Okay, once executed, the DAO established a connection and bringing the victim machine online and link into the Cobalt string. Okay, the victim server is online now. Finally, this is the summary part. In this presentation, we started by introducing the remote data license service, a key component of the remote desktop service. We then explored CVE 2024-38077 and authenticated Heap overflow vulnerability in RDL series. And next, we work through the exploitation process step by step, covering how to leak memory addresses, hijack execution flow, and bypass control flow guard. We also discussed techniques to increase the success rate to heap spraying, ensuring a more reliable exploitation. Finally, we show the successful Preauth RCE exploitation on Windows 2025. Okay, so our work was conducted on Windows Server 2025 with all security mitigations enabled. Remarkably, we achieved full unauthenticated remote code execution using just one single bug. Over past 20 years, Windows have introduced numerous security mitigations and protections, closing of countless exploitation cases. Right? However, as we just demonstrated, not all of them are truly dead. Though, in this bug, made license a classic heap overflow dating back to the 1990s. Just once again to defend the Windows Server 2025. Some things never change. Thank you for your listening. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us on the Twitter or just discuss with us. Thank you.